Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Scouser podcast. It is Monday night. We are back in action. The trio, 2 weeks in a row, baby. You can't beat this. I am your host, as always, Timuchin here in Chicago. Hot Saturday, ridiculously rainy Sunday. I am glad I wasn't at that fan fest on Sunday because it looked like a poncho and mud fest from what I saw on TV. I'm glad I avoided that. With us today, wearing the bluest hat. I mean, if you're listening to us on podcast, just to see the tone of this hat, you got to check it out on YouTube. And while you're there, you can subscribe to the channel. But Victor is with us. Victor, what's happening?
What's going on, man? Happy Monday. Happy to be here as always.
Damn, this is like the most positive I've seen Victor in a while. I don't know what the hell is going on. But
I like to call it lies, and more lies.
We've got a whole hour for me to bring this down. Don't worry.
You can only go down from here, that's for sure. And Gally's with us. Gally, what's happening?
Hanging in there. It is Monday and all, but yeah, survived the baseball game yesterday. Barely able to watch the riveting Arsenal match, but I got a little bit of the second half on my phone and watched the highlights back. Man, that was some craziness. So you got to tell me though, so because I wasn't watching the match, I didn't get to see any of the fan fest images or anything from yesterday. So was the weather that bad in Chicago?
Yes.
Was it like sheets of rain and all these people were outside?
Yes, it was freaking pouring, dude. Like, it was really coming down. And, like, people are like, and, there wasn't a lot of grass involved there. Yes, like when we were there on Saturday, it's basically grass that's dried out over the ridiculous heat of August and stuff. So it's more soil and stuff. I mean, like, your shoes already had a ton of dust. It's like, like a pretty dusty setup going there. So when we saw the rain in the morning, that's the first thing that we thought. I was like, holy shit, that has to be bad mud-wise. I mean, forget the rain. You can kind of, get away with the rain, I think, overall. But, yeah, I can only imagine the mud and all that kind of crap that people deal with. And it was pretty packed. I mean, and I was wondering, actually, how the atmosphere was compared to Saturday, where there were so many games. And there was more of like a mix of fans. A lot of Liverpool, a lot of Arsenal and Tottenham and stuff, but like everybody was represented, it felt like.
Of course.
Whereas I would think on Sunday, it was probably, well, I don't know if there are any City fans, but there were probably a lot of Arsenal fans. And then I was wondering if it got uglier, especially because of the game. So if you were at the Fan Fest on Sunday, send us a message and let us know if it got chippy. Because, like on Saturday, it is friendlier. Like you were telling me, Gally, before I went, it's a bunch of people. They're like, oh, we have the same hobby, kind of a vibe going. So there's not a lot of like rivalry and stuff. There's some banter but
it's usually good. It's good natured, in my opinion. What my experience, at least.
It is annoying where, people celebrated, for example, when Bournemouth first scored with the VAR and stuff like that. There was this little kids. I was going to be like, dude, here's my PlayStation ID. Meet me on FIFA because I can't kick your ass physically, but I will take you down to FIFA. Because he was like just constantly talking shit, and he was like a Chelsea fan of all things. But it was, like you said, like good natured. I was wondering how it was on Sunday because of the scope of the game, because it was probably a lot less fans scattered around different clubs, and the game itself probably, I would think, brought some. I mean, we'll talk a lot of Liverpool, but while you open the subject, let me ask you guys this. I'm sure you guys talked a lot about this in the Premier League show and probably could have recorded like a 5-hour league Premier show. But Bickler, here's my question to you, because I feel like, that's first time in a long time where I watched a game that's, I mean, I know I'm going to sound like an old fart, but it looked like the old rivalries, like old rivalry games and stuff like that. We talk about American sports over here, and we always say, oh, it's like the salary cap, the free agency and stuff like that has kind of like taken that away. Guy is playing with you this week, next week he's over there, 3 weeks later he's back and shit like that. Why do you think, I mean, is it just me that is not there as much in soccer? That's why everybody was kind of in shock. This was a lot more of a common occurrence, whereas it just felt like, holy cow, these guys really hate each other, which happened a lot more. Why do you think it's a lot less?
So, like, immediately I came into watching Premier League in the early 2000s, where a lot of that was already starting to shift out of the league, right? But what it reminded me a lot of, like Knicks Pacers. Like,
Yeah.
80s, like late 80s, early 90s playoff basketball is what it reminded me of, because I think what it is back then you have 5 guys on the team, right? And those guys were on that team for at least 2 or 3 years before they moved around inside the same league. So you had all these stories and all these characters that were just evolving around teams, even if it was like, even if it was one of like, even if it was a Charles Oakley, he was a heel wherever he went, right?
Yeah.
So this felt like that, because between those teams, Arsenal and City, you have a lot of players that have been there or been in the league for like 5, 6, 7 years at the top. So like you have the Bernardo Silva heels, you have the megastar Holland, which would have been like the MJ. Like you have these guys that have been here for a series of years now, not only in the City side or this Arsenal side, but at other sides, where Declan Rice coming from West Ham. Like I feel like we're getting to the point where these stories are been alive long enough that they're actually like having narratives in these games play out. And this match had everything, right? It was chippy out of the gate.
Yeah.
You had controversial calls. You have controversial yellow cards. You had like coaches getting into it. You had people getting into it after. It had like everything, including like the chippiness, the controversy, and the post-match fallout, which is like great. Like make the great again. Like,
is it like wrong for me to like kind of like when I saw that I was like, man, I know this shit.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't, I'm not like a
back when men were men.
Yeah. Like I don't condone like hooliganism or anything like that, but this is different. This is guys who like really, really dislike each other. And honestly, like if you play a team, doesn't matter what level, or maybe because I'm like an asshole on the pitch, but doesn't matter what level. When you play against a team, like like even in the stupid like indoor, there's like certain teams you always play against each other, and you kind of like grow like a little hatred towards like specific players. And
you
like,
got a 4-match history on them. You've got like receipts on,
But Gally, why do you think we see a lot less of it? Honestly, it was odd because now that Bickler mentions that, you have a lot of people that were at City now at Arsenal. You would think that would kind of soften it a little bit. It's almost like a bit worse because those guys went over there with a chip on their shoulder or something.
Well, I think part of it is it's Arteta. It doesn't matter that they liked him when he was there and he was the assistant number 2. He learned an awful lot about how Pep does things. And I think Pep and his players know that Arteta is a threat and he's building something at Arsenal. And I think that the players there are easy to hate too. Can we just be real? Like, I love me some Gabriel. I might be the biggest fan of the Gabriel fan base. No, I think he is the best center back in the Premier League right there.
Oh, yeah, okay. Well, I thought you were going to like Gabriel hating
you're
out.
No, but my point is, but he's easy to hate if you're an opposing player. Because he plays hard. He's really good at what he does. He gets under people's skin. He's aggressive. He's physical. He's loud. And I think that he took what Arteta needed them to have. And I think when you have a guy like, I think Kai Havertz has learned how to play with an edge that he didn't have at him at Chelsea or even at Leverkusen. I think he was a big body but didn't know how to use it. I said to Paul in the show, I think that Rodri sold every ounce of 20 seconds in. But Kai Havertz knows what he's doing when he comes in with that shoulder barge. And he does it to the player you have to get in his head early in the game. And if he's a little off there and he catches him with the shoulder and it gets him on the chin, he could see red there because it's off the ball, no effort. So they had an edge to him from jump. I think they thought they had to do that to play them. And I think this is what Arteta's trying to do. I think he's trying to create the edge that they're more than a finesse team. I also think it kind of sends a message to your team that, like, we can't just line up and beat them. And I think that's what Bernardo Silva in his comments post-match about the difference between Arsenal and Liverpool and why we still look at them differently is Liverpool showed they can show up, play their game, and beat us when we're playing ours. Arsenal doesn't play against us, and we don't even consider them as competition. Now, I think Arteta made sure his players knew that's how they felt about them, and they came out here. But I've said this before, how much of that hurts the Arteta team? Because now they start playing a negative football They have no point to come out at. You pick up that weird yellow, then you get a guy sent off. And I know they took a 2-1 lead, but let's be real here. Like, that goal could have been chalked off too. Like, this whole match was littered with craziness right up until those last 15 minutes, which just felt like it was just one-way traffic. And to me, it just felt like City was going to score. And I'm actually shocked they didn't get another one and win it, to be totally honest.
I mean, honestly, watching, if we were City fans, if Liverpool had a half like that, we'd be frustrated as all, because that ball was moving so slow, was never getting in the box. None of the boxes. I mean, it would have been a total different story if I think De Bruyne is there sending a couple of those balls, like if they can isolate him to send those balls into the box and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, it was kind of like a one half show in the second half, especially like just one team playing, the other one just defending for their lives. I mean, I think a lot of that frustration is from like they had to do something different than last year, because we talked about this in the panel show too, where, you know, Arsenal has a chance to actually beat City while they're rolling. City is reeling, but they go over there afraid of City, take a draw last year, and then comes to bite them in the ass and they lose the title at the end. Whereas I feel like they could have gone at City and probably beat them there. So I think they come out with, but Bickler, how did this become? Is it just like Arteta's reflection over here? Because honestly, I'm watching that game and I feel like, you know, we hate City mainly because obviously the 115 charges that we know is behind the scenes, make it 130, whatever like number you're using these days. But we almost like hate him because they're like good at the same time, right? There are a couple of guys that, you know, like Bernardo Silva and stuff like that, that I despise. But I look at the other side and I'm not hating them because they're good. I'm just hating them because they're just like assholes, like Gabriel Jesus, Havertz, I mean, Arteta and stuff like that. Is that basically those players becoming Arteta? Because Arsenal was not like this before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I never really thought of it like that. I guess that's true. I just also we also said this in the Premier League show. Like I think my main issue here is like if you're gonna be Arteta and you're gonna be so vocal about coming for the crown, like you better be a Kingslayer. And like I just don't think he has that mentality. Like with the way he sets up the play City, the quotes. Gally had quotes at like post match where he's talking about being proud of his team, like hanging on in a difficult situation, a difficult match. And it's like, he doesn't ever talk like a manager who has an expectation of winning that match. And like, to me, if I'm an Arsenal fan, that has to bother me a little bit at some point.
Yeah, I shall find out tomorrow on the panel show, because that should be like an interesting one, and get some takes from like the other guys to see how they view the calls and stuff like that. I mean, at the end of the day, when you look at it, if I gave you here, write me a scenario, Gally, in the best possible way this game can turn out for Liverpool, it will be mighty close. You couldn't even come up with this drama, and the final results, like the injuries that came out of it, the cars that come out of it, really kind of is ideal for Liverpool.
Yeah, I think it does everything. I think it actually it is. It absolutely is.
Positive says that Bickler mustache is a work of arts.
It is something. It's a work of something. It is. Yes. It's a work of something. Thanks, Sarah. I think that, the thing about this Arsenal team is, and the City partners, there's nothing you could have told me about a result. And I hate rooting for injury, but let's be real. I said it on the Premier League show. I don't think Rodri's the most important player in the Premier League. I think Rodri might be the most important footballer in world football, because I think to his club and country, he means more than any one player. Like, I think he's that good at what he does, where he's so far above the next place guy. He does so much for both of their success, as we saw at the Euros, and we've seen for, I said to Paul on the Premier League show, like, I think when he truly took over for Fernandinho and it became his team and his midfield, is when Pep City went to a new level. It wasn't getting Haaland, in my opinion. It was really having Rodri at the base of his midfield, because it allowed for De Bruyne to do even more of what he always envisioned him doing. And I think Rodri going down is the biggest news in world football. I think it plays a huge role in how this Premier League will shake out. I also think Arsenal not getting a win in a match like that where they lose Rodri, you have a lead, I think also really hurts Arsenal's chance of kicking on and moving forward. This is a side that had a mediocre draw to start the Champions League, so they're going to be all gung-ho trying to get on that. They have a tough run of fixtures coming too. I think this sets us up in a really, really good place to make this a pretty special season. And I think it puts City at a much tougher position trying to still compete on four fronts.
Yeah, I mean, Kazi brings out the fact that he was suspended for 3 games. They lost all 3. He's like a key guy to them as well as Spain, I think, like you're saying. I mean, yeah, and that's why in that sense, it's kind of like an ideal scenario. And that's going to be interesting. That's why tomorrow night, tune in at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern. We'll talk with the panel as well, Arsenal being represented, to see how it's going to be interesting how they react to this. Is it going to be like, man, we used every freaking ounce and still couldn't beat him, or is they're going to take this as a positive, knowing Rodri's injury and stuff like that? So it's going to be interesting to see how they come back. That's funny that Kazi mentions that. That's the first thing I thought of when I saw Rodri injury. I was like, watch, they're going to sign like Zubimendi for like 80 million or something like that, and in like January. You would think they would have to do some kind of a move in January to be able to kind of compensate, because it is the full year.
I love what Slot said after all the Zubimendi rumors came out, that he's regretting turning down Liverpool, and he hopes they come back in January. And he was asked that post-match, and he was like, yeah, so he told us no, we've moved on. We don't even talk about him. And by the way, do you think he could play better than Gravenberch is right now? This was his quote.
Yeah.
The man, and I always say he's direct, and then Maka always jumps in and he's like, I think you meant he's Dutch. I think it is the thing that I am most
It is a Dutch thing,
with.
yes.
It is the most he gets asked a question, he answers it, and not in a way like he's afraid the reporter's going to write an article about what he just said. He actually answers it in a way that the reporter can't write anything but what he said, because there's no question in it. I actually think it's one of the least talked about things right now is how refreshing these press conferences are, because none of us actually thought, the press conferences might get easier or better to digest because Klopp was so good at them. But he was good at being your friend and telling you nothing, right? Like he
would basically make it a joke and move on, not give an answer. You're right. I do feel like he gives more answers than anything else.
This guy's a dick and gives you a direct answer.
Yes.
AKA he's Dutch.
He is Dutch. This is the definition of Dutch. The national anthem is nothing but this. But yeah, I mean, we can go on and on about this game, like some of the referee calls and stuff. Like I say, we'll talk about it on the panel show. I'm sure you guys talked a lot about it in the Premier League show that's going to come out tomorrow, right? And then I'm sure we'll still be talking about it on Wednesday, because I'm sure there's going to be more and more fallout out of this as more footage gets out. Obviously, the Rodri news, but it's made me look at a lot of things in general in soccer, like the question I asked you guys in terms of rivalries, some of these calls, anything from like crowd on this goalie thing to like these like second yellow reds and stuff like that. But let's get to us more importantly. Bickler, it's an easier game. It didn't make the Sunday game even a lot more enjoyable to sit back and watch, knowing we took care of business. Last week's game against Tottenham Arsenal, it was after the Forest game, so it didn't really have the same positive vibe in some ways. We just kind of kicked back and watched this after what's made it look like easy work of Bournemouth. Is that thanks to Bournemouth, or is that thanks to us playing better?
Definitely us playing better was a big part of it. I think Orange Swat is probably the only guy that can let a player keep a goal record intact, like scoring the third minute into each match we play him, and still keep a clean sheet, which is pretty impressive. But I about lost my pants when I found out that Semenyo had scored at the exact same minute last year when we played him, which is just ridiculous. So early wake-up call, I think, helped a little bit. Do we want that? Should we need it? No. I think it helped. I do think, in general, just the passing was so much sharper and crisper. The runs were better, like across the board. The execution of the system was just so much cleaner, obviously. And then you had just a couple of I thought, we scored 3-0, and I think people are going to talk about Diaz a lot. To me, I thought the most impressive performances were defensively. I thought Trent looked amazing going forward. I think more importantly, Trent had some of his best defensive work I've seen in a long time. Yes. And then I'll tell you, if Konate can stay fit and he can stay in form and he can pass like he passed in this match, I think that puts him in an elite tier that he hasn't been in before.
I think the biggest thing with that is, until now, we saw if Konate can keep this up, not only obviously we see in this game, Gally, it definitely helps us. But more importantly, I think it has to change how everybody plays us. Because it felt like they were okay, we're not going to get Trent have it. We're not going to let McAllister have it. We're going to pressure Van Dijk so he doesn't do that diagonal. Give it to Konate. We'll deal with what he can do. Because it's not like he's no Matip. So we'll deal with what Konate can dish. So if Konate can dish this out on a weekly basis, the teams cannot do that anymore. It's almost like, we're not going to let this guy beat us. We're going to let this guy beat us in basketball. If that guy is constantly draining the shots, you're God damn it, now we're going to have to guard this guy too, I guess. And then it opens stuff up for everybody else.
Yeah, I mean, the Celtics just won an NBA title on basically having 7 guys on the floor. and no, as a joke, the joke was the Celtics had 5 guys on the floor and you can't defend any of them. And then they were and they'll bring in 2 more guys who are fresh that you can't defend. And that's what happened, right? They won with a different player every day. And I think we're starting to see that. I personally thought Konate was outstanding. The distribution from the back was great. The points when he was aggressive, when he stepped up and made the tackles. I always get worried about the fitness, so I want him to stay healthy and continue this. But you can see it even, translating onto the offensive end where he's more attack-minded on set pieces. He always looks a threat now. We talked about him being a confidence player that really needed that confidence to play better. And I think you're right. If he feels good, the way teams defend against us, if they have to start stepping up and worrying about his long balls and his diagonals, what is that going to do for both Trent and for Virgil? And at times, what's it even going to do for the attack-minded players in the midfield in front of him? And I think what we're seeing is I know we can't get through a program any longer without talking about the gravy train, even though we spent an entire year talking about how we didn't think that nickname was necessary for anyone but the little guy John on this program. But he's I mean, I don't know what you could talk about in that performance. He didn't kick a ball wrong in that match for me. Gravenberch was outstanding. He connected play, a couple of those turns.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys saw the Dutch, and again, we'll go back to the Dutch, but there's, Rafael van der Vaart, which is the former Tottenham player. He's basically the Dutch version of Neville and Maka and in one, right? He's a
dude has the craziest takes.
Yes,
he has crazy takes. But he doesn't
Stephen A.
actually,
Smith of Netherlands.
But he doesn't back down from anything he says, and it's not always pro Netherlands. A lot of times he destroys the Netherlands players. But 2 years ago, he was the one who actually came out and said that, Liverpool had a short list of 3 midfielders. It was Tuchemani, it was Bellingham, and it was Gravenberch. And he said, I believe if Liverpool signs Gravenberch, he'll come on to be the best midfielder of all of them. And the other day, they kind of doubled down on him and asked him for the comment. He's like, I'll say it again. If Bellingham wasn't English, no one in Spain would think he was that good, seeing that he came way down his level in his second year in Spain. I believe Ryan Gravenberch is a better all-around footballer than Jude Bellingham. I think that's hyperbole in building up a Dutch player. But when you watch these performances he's putting in, he does look like the best player in a midfield that could you could build a team around. And I think you can see why there was so much hype about him at times. And I think there's a bigger level for him if he had more of a Zubamendi-like alternate 6 next to him. I think Gravenberch could be even better if they make the big buy they need. And I still think there's a midfielder needed there for the long term. But right now, I think he's the player of the season through 5 matches. And for me, he was the man of the match for me in this match. And I didn't even think it was close.
Yeah, I mean, he's been excellent. I mean, there's like his movements on the ball, his positioning, like everything seems to be clicking right now. It's a lot of like confidence, and that's kind of like shows. But yeah, I'm almost like trying not to. I'm kind of like waiting for the train, about to get on it, but just want to see a bit more. Like see if the other train is coming. But like like before I jump on it, I'm like waiting a bit more because I just want to see it in a longer time, and I want to see how. I hope we don't wear him down because we don't know that about Gravenberg, right? Like we talk about Konate, for example. We're like, we don't want to wear him down because he wears down. We don't know about that about Gravenberg.
Good point.
He's a lot younger and stuff, but he's never had, he never had to play this many games in a long time, really, like ever since he left Netherlands. So going back to Konate, though, Bickler, let me ask you this. As a center back, do you think some of this confidence and better play comes with the fact that they are protected a bit better as opposed to being on an island all the time? And there is like, there is more defensive awareness on the team and you're not on an island. I'm like Mr. American sports analogies today, but it's almost like a cornerback getting help from a safety.
So are you trying to say that when you have a less volatile working environment, you perform better? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, look, this system definitely helps defenders for sure, right? But I still think, I mean, there's a reason the one loss was against Forest, a team that just is exceptionally good at counterattacking, right? So, like, I think the system obviously defends center backs better and protects it better. But I think, like, I think that's the base for sure, right? Like you're not conceding goals. You definitely get confidence. And like maybe that's what Konate needed, right? Maybe Konate needed to go out into a system where he felt like, they were keeping clean sheets and had a little bit of confidence. And that's really what's helped him turn the corner. Maybe for sure. I think but yeah, the system 100% helps that. I still think there are things that are difficult in the system for center backs, especially considering the fact that it's so centered around ball retention and playing out of the back. So I think those things are more difficult. I think you have to be better with the ball at your feet. But I think here's the other thing. I think Konate is I always think he's been underrated in terms of like how good he is on the ball. Like I think he's better on the ball than most people think he is. I think most people think he's poor on the ball because he's a big dude. Right?
Because we kind of compared him to like Van Dijk on the ball or Matip on the ball, so it's like the grading scale is kind of high for him.
Well, possibly, and then you've got Kwanzaa too, who's also like very quick and good on the ball. But I also think Konate is like I said, I think he's pretty good on the ball, especially for a dude his size. And if he adds that range that we saw this week consistently to his game, like I think that just adds another. I really do think that puts him in a special tier.
And I'll be honest, like that first goal, that pass, when he hit it, I was like, because it just went too high. I'm like, it's going to take forever to get there. That's not going to work, bro. And then Kepa does Kepa things and kind of helps. But at the same time, it kind of gave, we were talking about it this morning show as well, kind of gave vibes of that Mane goal against Bayern, where he does bring it done well and he does finish it really well. And I think that's one of the bigger differences with Diaz is, we talked a lot about last year about, he works a lot and he does this and stuff, but the final product was not there. And this year it's been, is that just form, Gally, that the final product seems to be there all the time? Is it confidence again? Because I swear Diaz last year wants to hammer that in and he kind of skies it or something like that. We're like empty nets.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the fact that the guy has 5 Premier League goals in 5 matches is always going to help his confidence when he's a guy who would create all kinds of opportunities and do nothing with them. It felt like last year a lot. I think there's a difference here. I think if you ask me we talked about Konate, and I was going to say, I think part of Konate looking so good is that Trent has looked actually really good defending next to him, which also helps. I like it. Well played. I was waiting for it. I miss him too. But I think when it comes to Diaz, we all came into this season like Gakpo's going to win the left
Yeah.
doing job. We're going to sell Diaz. If you ask me what's the one thing that in your mind Arne Slot has done the best at, we all said he needs to figure out Soboslai. He needs to get Kanate fit. He needs to figure out where Trent could play. You know what he did? He was like, I'm going to make Luis Diaz as important as Mo Salah. Like literally, he's like, that's what I'm going to do. And he's done it. And I think if you look at the underlying numbers of what he's done, it's not just the finishes, it's where he's finishing them from. He's playing more in control with still having that chicken with your head cut off vibe. Yeah. He takes on players, he attacks players, but he doesn't look like he's constantly questioning his own decision making. And I think when he feels good that way, I think we're starting to see the live wire we signed from Porto and what we saw those last 3 months of the year. And maybe last year was a lot more about what he went through with his dad and coming off the injury than it was him not really fitting into the overall like play in the system. And I think what it comes down to with Diaz is if we can get this type of output from him, goals and assists, like I think the sky's the limit, because I think you saw on Saturday what Nunez and Mo can look like, especially against a backline like Bournemouth, who will come out and play you a little bit, but isn't attacking you the whole match. And I thought it was a really good sign for the three of them for the first time to play together to look better than they did all last season. And that was our starting front line last year. I thought that was a really good sign.
I think it's only going to get better too, because I mean, now that you are afraid of Diaz's shots, it's going to be harder to defend them. And I think that's one thing like Mo had before. Now I feel like everybody's only afraid of Mo's shot, if anything else, because he's not going to beat you 1v1. He has been really struggled beating people off the dribble. But I think with Diaz, like, he would beat you off the dribble, but you were not as afraid of his shots. And then he would kind of like dribble towards the middle and get confused and try to pass it and like usually like misplace it, probably overthinking it, like you were saying, Gally. I think him finding his shot is only going to make life better for him and the people around him, because that's one other thing you got to worry about on defend now. So he's probably been, I mean, Brian Shelton does. I really thought Diaz was the odd man out. I'm glad I'm wrong. I think, yes, I think we watched so much of Gakpo, maybe because we watched the Euro a lot more than we watched Copa America, because really Diaz was doing, like, it was a man show for Colombia as well. But I think we watched the Euros a lot more closely and saw what Gakpo did. So his stock was a lot higher in some ways than like Diaz. But these are good problems to have. It's not like one or the other. We'll talk about Wednesdays. I mean, the West Ham game coming up over here. But one other player, actually two other players I want to get to. Let's touch on Nunez pretty fast, real first. You mentioned it, Gally, that we went back to that, that the three that we had for the most of the time. What did you think of Nunez's game? Because this game, I did not originally want him in the starting 11 because I expected more like a Forest-like Bournemouth. But because it wasn't the Forest like Bournemouth, because that second goal does not, or actually his goal, I should say, the third goal does not happen against Forest. They're not up that high like an idiot.
No.
Letting, like Nunez run behind. But is it just that Bournemouth fit him? You could see the relief that he had when he scored the goal. Or is it just Nunez? This is just typical Nunez. He's going to, score a worldie, and then he's going to frustrate us next week.
It might happen, but I'm not going to go there when we've been waiting for a positive to happen. And I don't think it was just a great goal. I thought he put in a positive performance for the entire time he was on the pitch. Darwin Nunez scored one goal and had 0 offsides, people. Who took the over on that?
Yeah, no shit. He didn't have an offside, now that you mentioned it.
He had no offsides. And I thought his interplay with people was great. And I thought the best thing was I felt like he led our press well. He pressed at the right times. And Slot talked about how important these clean sheets are and how earlier in the year it was Mo tracking back and doing hard work that people didn't think he could do. And that in this match, Darwin was winning. Slot made a point, in my opinion, midweek to say Darwin needs to do X, Y, and Z to get a start here. And he's close. supposedly he was going to start against Forest, but picked up a little injury in the pre-match, which is why Jota got the start, which is why he then still started Jota against Milan, because he was planning to give him this one in the league. I think Darwin is actually getting himself close to the equal level with Jota. And I think goals like that and having good 1-2s with Mo and the good interchange at times, I still think he offers more all around than any other center forward we have currently at the club when he's playing on his side, on his day. And I think the manager wants him to be his starting number 9. Paul, I might be completely wrong about that, but I genuinely believe he wants that for the player. And I think the manager's also smart enough to know the other guy, Jota, can come in and win a game with 10 minutes to go after not kicking a ball all day. And I think we've all come to grips with the fact, as much as we want Nunez to be that guy, I'm not sure he has that in the arsenal to show up and have enough smarts in 5 minutes to put it together and win you a match. So maybe I'm wrong there. I thought Nunez was really good. And I think he can actually, like Diaz, can kick on and make this side even a little better.
I mean, Bigler, he's like more even like Angie was mentioning, we were watching that, like the Fan Fest. I mean, he was really good with his back. He was able to, like kind of control the ball, drop it, get that interplay going. He's probably like the closest thing to a number 9 that we have, but he's more used to dropping that ball and making a run and like taking that space behind and stuff like that. Is he going to be able to work better in this new system compared to the old setup?
Well, I guess I'm just relieved because, like, I think my initial fear was that he was being frozen out and was not going to get a run here, and it appears that that's not the case. And I'm relieved. Yeah, I'm relieved because it just feels early. It feels early to give up on him, like from a standpoint of like not only from he's not been here that long to his age in general and to like where he has his like career path. It just feels early for him to like be given up on. So glad that he's getting a run. I agree with you guys. I thought he looked good. And I think I'm really optimistic here because like if we're going to give Slot credit for turning Diaz around, we have to recognize he's also turned Gravenberch into something we weren't sure he was.
Do you give credit to, I know Gally mentioned that. I personally don't. I don't think it has much to do with Slot personally. Do you give credit
to the Diaz thing?
Diaz, yeah.
I don't know. Look what he did to that striker, in Feyenoord. That was like that dude basically had his career resurrected at Feyenoord. So I see what he's done with, like I look at what he did essentially with Gravenberch, and then I'm looking at essentially the fact that he shored up one of the leakiest defenses in the league last year. So like he really, as you can almost credit him for his big improvements at every single level, right? So like I think the two ones that are unsolved are the Szoboszlai.
Other than one.
Stop it,
There's
Gally.
one.
Stop it.
There's this one spot that is not getting better, people.
Is that because it's like a square peg into a round hole, or is it just a matter of time?
Well, that's my concern with Darwin, too. That's my concern with Darwin, too. Like, I think my concern with Darwin is the same one I have with Szoboszlai. It's like, can you get that player to fit the system? It appears to me that Darwin has a little more like elasticity from like a positional standpoint, which helps him. That I don't know Szoboszlai has, but like that is the thing. Like, what is Szoboszlai? Because like his body of work suggests he's strictly an attacking midfielder, but I think the dream I was sold was that he was a true box to box, and like I feel like he gave us that dream for 3 matches. So like I don't know.
I mean, I don't know. I personally think, like I didn't watch. I mean, what was that game? I think the Forest game was a different story, but I did not watch this game and thought Szoboszlai was poor. I think he has become, it's kind of like a similar role, I guess, but in kind of like Genie, where like the work he does off the ball does not get noticed at all, and he does a lot of it because Gravenberch can slide up top sometimes. Maka can kind of like take that space sometimes, because he does the tracking back. He does a lot of the dirty work. I think we kind of set the bar, like compared to Genie, for example, when he came, he scored these goals, he took these shots. So, but even Slot mentioned that, from that position, we should be getting more scoring contribution, assists or goals or whatever for a player that plays at Liverpool behind the quality top 3. but I think that's still going to come over time. I almost feel like the criticism is a bit over the top in terms of like expecting it to be kind of like switches game style in like a month.
I do get that. I guess my question is what number 10 in the world is judged on their work rate and not what they produce going forward? And I think he claimed last year when he struggled after those 5 or 6 great matches that like it was a new system. He was being asked to do things he was never asked to do. And we made excuses for him. He's got to be Jordan Henderson. He's not Jordan Henderson. He's a number 10. Play a 4-2-3-1. We bought this player. Every time I saw Harvey Elliott play in that role, he played better than what I've seen Szoboszlai do so far. And I guess
does he really play as a number 10? I mean, you know, on paper,
if he doesn't, then I don't understand what is he doing? Because to me, I guess my question is if does he not? I mean, that to me, he looks to me like he's an attack-minded player. I'll ask you this. I'll flip the question to this. Do you think if McAllister was sitting in his position on the pitch, he'd be doing the same amount of work off the ball and offering you more going forward? Because to me, if the answer is yes, then we spent $70 million wrong on the guy forward up the pitch.
See, I don't think so.
You think that Szoboszlai is better in that?
I don't think. I mean, I'm not saying Szoboszlai is better there. I think Szoboszlai gives you some things that McAllister can't in that spot, in terms of speed, agility, getting past players and stuff like that. I think he gives you that, and he gives you a faster guy to track back than McAllister.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like, you know, look at the goal against AC Milan, for example. If that, you know what I mean? Like, in terms of like track back speed and stuff, now you have that guy tracking back even further up the pitch, and you're making him cover more ground. I know everybody wants, you know, another defensive midfielder to push Maka up top. I kind of like this double pivot the way we have it right now. I know, yes, you can get more from him, but I think this is taking advantage of McAllister a lot better, where it gives him less space to cover, and I think more time on the ball. It's like he can do more on the ball.
Do you think that Jones at some point ever gets a shot to play in that?
I think, for example, he gets it this week, don't you think? Like, for example, against West Ham, we see what he does in that role, I think.
Well, and that's kind of where I'm more just throwing names out. Like, does Jones get a shot someday to try to, until Harvey's fit?
I think that's the only thing, right? The player that we will be like, how come he doesn't get a look there, is not there right now, which probably is the best thing Szoboszlai has got going for him right now, is because we would probably call for, and more than likely he would be subbed in for, you know, you would see him in action for 20 minutes and stuff. That guy is not available. That's why I feel bad for Harvey in that sense.
Yeah.
But I think like Szoboszlai gets an extra lifeline. It's almost like bonus. He got the level 10, so he gets an extra life. So he can get some more minutes over there because Harvey is not there. Where are you at it with, Bickler? With Szoboszlai, Maka, and the gang. Cool and the gang.
I mean, I think this goes back to like why I always thought we needed a true 6, because I think regardless of the fact that it's a double pivot, when it's in possession, you do need one of those guys to be a true anchor. And I think I'd rather have Gravenberch further forward. I'd rather have Maka further forward. It solves the Szoboszlai issue, except for where does he go? I think. Well, he doesn't go anywhere now that there's Chiesa. That's for certain. Because I think Chiesa makes it so that he can't do that. So, and I almost think that, you can almost get what you can for Szoboszlai. He does seem, the longer this continues, the more it does seem like he's just an odd part that's not going to make sense.
Don't ever give anyone the number 8 again, people, because they come in with all this happiness. And think about how excited we were to wait a year for Keita. And then we got Szoboszlai, and Megan had talked to us about him for literally 3 seasons straight, being like, if we get this guy, I can't spell his name, but this is how it goes. Like, he's Hungarian. He's amazing. She was talking about him when he was at Salzburg, let alone went to Leipzig. And I just feel like it's almost a little bit this, like, pressure of the 8, a little bit of the over the top. Like, Someone joked the other day, someone should give Trent the number 8. I was like, no, then he'll think he should play in midfield.
Yeah.
I heard him give a quote the other day. He gave a quote the other day to Muchin, and I thought the hair on the back of your neck stood up because he said, I went to the manager and challenged him. I need him to make me the best right back in the world.
Yes,
not offensively.
I was about to bet. That's the next player I was going to bring up.
All right, get to your question.
I mean, I was like, hey, I mean, we talked about it a little bit this morning too, but him wanting to be a better defender and kind of like wanted to hear, and I honestly, like I said it this morning too, the way he worded that, it almost felt like the old regime was okay with his deficiencies in defending. You're like, don't worry about it, just keep getting the assists. We'll cover. Verge will cover the back, kind of an ordeal. Whereas now he feels like he's being challenged more defensively. But to wrap up on Szoboszlai real quick, I don't know. I feel like it's like we just talked about how we didn't do the gravy train right away and stuff like that. And I know he's been here 2 months longer or whatever, right? I think he just doomed himself by having a really, really hot start. And then we kind of expected that top level all times. I really think he can still be good in this system. And I don't agree with I know what Bickler is saying, but I don't think we need an anchor like 6 in this. I rather have these 6s that way we have, that I am okay with pushing up, because they're going to do well when they go up, as long as they can cover for each other defensively, as opposed to a guy who has to give it to somebody to create, because I just defend around here, I sweep back here kind of a thing, like a Fabinho type or somebody like that, because I think this system is different. But going back to Trent, we kind of talked about obviously the contract stuff. He talked a little bit about that as well, like wants to be the captain but isn't in his hand and stuff like that. I guess my biggest thing, Bickler, is I really first of all, I am kind of shocked with those statements that Gally's talking about defensively, because my impression on him was, once he was lured to midfield, he just wanted to be nothing but midfield. Defending is overrated anyway. I can pass better than anyone, kind of a deal. So for him to say that, and I think this is the first time he's kind of he said it's exaggerated, which I agree, but he's at least noticing and acknowledging the fact that he has defensive deficiencies and, he has to get better on. Do you think, I mean, obviously Slot's conversation has to have an effect on him, but does it affect his contract situation as well? Because we kind of always, I wasn't, but I know some people have said, Mr. Shelton, the midfield thing and stuff like that. Maybe that could be something a team can lure him with and stuff. It just feels like he's content with it in this system.
I mean, I think Trent's main ambition is become captain and one of the most decorated Liverpool players in his hometown ever. I think that's his main ambition. So unlike a lot of players who I think can get their heads turned, I think the fact that it's rooted in the city keeps it a lot stickier. I mean, look at, Gerrard being halfway on the road to Chelsea and turning around. I think it makes it harder, right? So I don't know if it really plays into his contract thing. I also think I think at the end of the day, when you're conceding less, right, and he's in the spot right now he's in where he's part of a back line that's been pretty dominant, and he's also had the license to go forward and create in a way that's stable and hasn't made everybody else a liability. I think you can comfortably say those things from a place of safety, right? I think he feels a little bit like he's in the nest where he can admit these things, where I think that's harder to admit when you're consistently getting scored on and, the team's conceding goals. I think it's harder to go ahead and be yeah, I need to improve defensively.
I mean, like I said, that's why I kind of liked hearing it. But I guess my only criticism now is, and I know it's a lot of agent talk and you got to say the right stuff and all that stuff, Gally. And I don't put this on, for example, Verge. I was telling Matush this morning as well. I don't expect Verge to come out and say what I'm about to say, because, he's a pro, and to get your contract, you got to say the right stuff and let the manager deal with it, blah, blah, blah. But for Trent, I almost expect him to come out and say, I'm not worried about the contract. You guys shouldn't be worried about the contract. They'll eventually work it out. That's for the managers. I'm going to stay at Liverpool, and kind of totally close the door on it. I know it might affect the negotiations and stuff like that. And like I say, I don't expect this out of Mo. I don't expect this out of Verge. But for the reasons that Bickler said, I kind of want that out of Trent to say, you know what, nothing is more important to me than this. Money and stuff will get sorted out. This is what I want. Because when he says I want to win trophies, that's more important to me and stuff like that. Obviously, everybody's going to say, "What are you saying?"
Yeah, I don't disagree with you there. I'm not gonna tell a person who is trying to negotiate the largest contract of their professional career at this point how to negotiate. I think there are real conversations at the club. I honestly believe the club is not worried in any way whatsoever about Trent leaving. And I know you just brought the comment up from Sir Z. I was going to mention it. I actually think part of this that went so well is all of England rallied around him being the best right back in England as soon as Lee Carlisle was made manager and started him twice, and he won 2 man of the matches. And all of a sudden, Roy Keane's like, how did they not start him? Neville's like, why wasn't he starting? And Carragher's like, you said he shouldn't make the team. What the fuck is wrong with you? Like, at the end of the day, I think this comes down to Southgate had a different idea. You made a comment earlier, though. I do think that this tactical setup is helping him mask some of his deficiencies, which is also making him realize I can get a little better in the small areas and be an even better defender in this type of setup. And I think he sees it as a big picture. I think those comments were as much him telling the club, this is my guy. I'm in with him. I'm telling you, I want him to criticize me. Yeah. I want to be his captain. I want to be who you build this all around. Stop talking to Mo and Virgil until you give me the biggest contract Liverpool's ever given a player. And from there, we'll worry about where we take this. Because I believe in this manager, and I think other players around me do too. And I think that's a really, really cool thing. Like, I expect his deal to be done during the next international break.
Yes, I called it.
I'm serious.
Mid-October, right? 16th or something like that. All these are going to be done, I think. I expect all three to be resolved one way or the other. Because I think they do them all at the same time. Or if they do two and they don't do the third, it's almost like not doing it. It's almost doing it and saying, yeah.
Do you think they'll announce them together? Felicia? You think they'll announce them together? Like they're in like Robertson's pool?
Yeah, I mean, if it's all being done, I feel like it's all done at the same time. And if you only get two done and the third one not done, it's kind of similar to when they did Mo and that Mane. We all figured what was going to happen, right? I mean, I think that's basically how it would work. If 2 out of the 3 happens, I think that's kind of like how it would work. But yeah, I mean, I kind of like to say, like, I loved hearing that because, like I said, it gave me a different impression of him because I kind of like thought of him as more the defending, I guess, you know, kind of a approach to the right back. I think him wanting to improve there. I mean, it could be just saying the right things too. But let's get to the West Ham game. Time for rotation, I assume. I mean, hopefully we don't keep trotting out the same people until it's kind of like falls apart. Bickler, are you expecting a full-blown, who's the backup? Who's the red team? You guys are starting this week kind of a rotation? Or do you think it's similar to a bit more than the AC Milan game where the changes only like 3 or 4?
I think it's 10 years of me asking rotation and never getting it. That makes me think that we're going to see like 3 changes to this. But we shall see. I mean, I'd like to see wholesale changes and honestly not take this competition very seriously. But like, I don't know. I don't know that he's got the stones to, I don't know. That's probably not the right way to put that. I don't know that he wants to disrespect the competition in his first year in the league like that. So I will wait and see. I'd like to see more changes. I think we're going to get. I think we may get like 4 changes. But
see, normally I agree to that, but I guess, you know, when you put Gakpo, Jota, Chiesa up top, I mean, that's 3 changes right there on your front line, and that's not really, you know, that's not saying like, we're throwing this away. I mean, you're still putting. I know maybe the cohesion might not be there, but you're still putting a ridiculous front 3. You would think you can put Kwanzaa, maybe Costas again, Brad. I mean, you can change the starting 11, it feels like, maybe because of the depth we have, and knock on wood, not as many injuries, Gally. Midfield is probably the only area where we're like, who is getting a lot of miles? Because you would think you can see Ando there now. You can probably see Jones now. Do you just throw a no-name there, or do you pick either Gravenberch or Mecca and be like, yeah, you got to split it 45-45?
No, I actually think we're gonna see the Tyler Morton tomorrow. To be honest, I think there's a better chance, and I hate saying this. I think there's a better chance seeing Tyler Morton tomorrow than there is Endo. Endo's not making Premier League benches, and Morton made the Champions League bench when Endo didn't. Like I think the manager is moving on. I think Endo will get some play, and I'm not trying to get Paul going and get him angry, but no, because I don't.
He almost turned the hat forward, like.
I think he's going to start tomorrow. I think you could see Endo, Morton. Literally, I think you could see Endo, Morton, and Jones tomorrow. I think you're going to see Darwin starting. I think he's going to reward Darwin for the goal and the performance and give him a second start in a row. Because I think you want to
starting him in the midfield. That's shit behind him.
Well, then people will complain about Darwin when he doesn't play well. I think Gakpo plays. I think the back line is where you have to see all the changes. Like, I'd make it all. I'd change all four of the starting defenders. And I know you don't like doing that as a defender, Temujin, but I think Gomez needs minutes. I think Kwanzaa needs confidence.
I noticed the thing, by the way, in this system, it's a bit less risky than the old system.
Because we're not playing the high line.
Yeah.
You sit Kelleher and put the academy keeper in.
But I think you play Bradley. I think you play Simicast. I think you play Gomez, and you play Kwanzaa. I think you change up your whole back four.
Okay.
But then if you change your midfield, and then you want to start like now we're literally saying Nunez is the only person in Kelleher that started on the weekend. And now we're back to like 10 wholesale changes and F this freaking group. So
well, let me ask you guys this. Do you think, Gally, I mean, we'll start with you. We always saw, I mean, it's going to happen, I guess, naturally, anytime you change 10 guys, 11 guys, or whatever. Do you think this system, the way it's played, it's a bit more compact, it's a bit more safer, I guess? Do you think it's a bit easier to have cohesion compared to the Klopp system?
It absolutely is, because I think the Klopp system was all about, like, pace and anarchy in the moment, and I think when you do that you have to be like used to it and playing it and with the guys and feeling it. And I think when you rotate too much you lost it, and we saw it so many times, right? How many times we go for that January FA Cup match on ESPN Plus and you wake up and you're like, wow, we're down 2-0 to Wolves. Fucking awesome, they're in the second division, what the Christ. Like, but then you looked at the team and you were like, well, I wouldn't have started any of these guys either. Neither would Klopp. I think this system plays differently than that. I also think that this team is actually better right now and deeper and feels better about themselves because of the way they've been playing. I also think we're catching a wounded Hammers team at Anfield. So I think the manager should feel confident to rotate, because that Hammers team has to rotate too, because they got to start getting some results. And I think that they are prime for the picking right now. Do I wish we had a, third-tier division team to play in this first little 11-man rotation? Yes. Not a Premier League side. But I think we can go into this match, rotate 8-9 players, still feel good about how we're going, and worst-case scenario, bring on Mo, Soboslai, Naka, and change the whole game, or Virgil. Like, if you really need Trent, if you need to, you can go to your bench
and have. I mean, that's the thing. I think because of the depth, Bickler, we're putting out a starting 11 over there. Even when you do a lot of rotation, that is going to be a pretty strong lineup. But I'll ask the same question to you: do you expect to see as many like disconnects that you would say that, like, oh, you can tell these guys didn't play before, kind of a deal? Do you think it will be less now compared to before? Mainly because probably you're not suddenly throwing kids out there either.
This is the argument that I always had for rotation, right? Because A, you're protecting your first team, and B, you're growing your second team, right? Yeah. So, like, I think when we look at this, like, we're talking about these rotations and stuff, but I think the interesting thing is like you have Kwanzaa, lots of minutes. Bradley, lots of minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Austin, lots of minutes. Gakpo was a starter for a long time. You know, like so like when you're looking at this second rotation, it's not Dan's, it's not the academy kids. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what's interesting about this is like the more that we see this rotation, the more experience these guys are going to have, and they're going to feel less like a second team and more like a 1B, which is ideal.
I think it's because early in the season, aside from Harvey, you don't really have any serious injuries, so you're able to put your backup, who would probably start for most teams, which is a great, thing to have. And like you're saying, you get them some minutes. So if you do need them for an injury, or we're getting into these months where we're going to have to rotate regularly, you have confidence in throwing the guy out there. So I am hoping to see actually like a good performance out of this team. And I think guys like Gakpo and Chiesa and stuff like that get minutes that's, they're going to try to make the best out of. And I think that will produce some good stuff. Having said that, let's do some predictions. Gally, we will start with you.
So I'm going to go, because we're having so much rotation at the back, I am going to go with the Timuchin special 3-1. I'm going to go with the special. I think we give one up at some point, but I don't think it's one that puts us behind early and we chase. I think, to your point, the idea that Tyler Morton is the extension of the academy kids we might need to bring in, who multiple Champions League clubs were trying to buy in RB Leipzig and Bayern Leverkusen and other clubs that were interested in, who scored a worldie and was the player of the year at a championship side that almost came up last year. And I think the fact that Tyler Morton is the extension of this side.
Yeah.
This might be the deepest side of any team that Jurgen Klopp ever would have managed.
Okay, knock on wood, man. Knock on wood. Every time we said this in the past, we were like, next thing you know, like there's like 4 people are out. We don't have any center backs and stuff like that.
But the truth is, they built a squad of professionals that actually can compete. So I think my big key is 3-1. Chiesa gets off the score sheet because, the man was on the pitch for 8 seconds, found himself in Nunez offside position and hit it off the post. I'm almost happy it didn't go in, because how unsettling would it have been to have that thing chalked off for being offside? Because he was offside. I don't know if you saw it at the Fan Fest. He was off by a mile. But he is lively. He looks a player, and he looks so happy to be here. Like, I hope he gets to run out from the beginning and can put on a big performance.
We didn't get to that part, but I can see the way he plays. I can see him play for Szoboszlai.
In the 10
and stuff.
Yeah,
he has that work rate. He has the physicality and stuff like that. But we'll see. Let's not write off. So let's Szoboszlai train. Sobi train. We come up with something. Bickler prediction.
Sobi train is the new saying. Hashtag Sobi train.
Oh, let's not ever do that again.
Hashtag Sobi.
God, I'm so distracted. And Gally took everything I was going to say, too. I was going to say 3-1, and I was going to say, I was going to mention Case, having a great game. Okay, I'll do something funky. I'll go 5-1, and I'll tell you why. I think if we get – listen, stop, dude. I think if we get a couple goals here, I think West Ham is banged up, and they look so slow. They look so slow this weekend. And I think if a couple goes in, we get our tail up, and then I can see Chiesa going in and knocking in. I'll put Chiesa for 2.
I'll take Chiesa for 2. I'll have it to go.
Take the over.
I'll go with the 3-0. The new slot special clean sheets. It could be very similar to a Bournemouth game. That's what I'm at least hoping for. And, that game could have been – I know we kind of got sloppy a little bit where they got some looks as well, but a bit more clinical, a bit better cohesion. I think you could have been like 5-6 as well. But should be interesting. At least see these backups and then bring up that. We'll start the conspiracy theories. How come this guy isn't starting and stuff like that? So we get to talk about that. But I'll be back tomorrow night with the panel. That should be interesting. There'll be a lot of Arsenal and City conversation over there. We'll definitely have somebody from Arsenal on there because Alan doesn't usually show up when the team doesn't do well. But we have a backup Arsenal guy now, so he'll be able to show up for Alan. But yes, we'll do that. And then I'll be back Wednesday morning do us a favor, give us a like, a subscribe, and as I always say, grab someone by the ear and say, go follow these guys. I did pass out approximately, probably with Gordo combined, we probably passed out like 400 or 500 coasters in that fan fest. I was throwing them at everybody. And I gave some to Gordo to pass out as well. And then he was taking customers away from me because I would go to somebody and they were like, oh, this dude just gave me some. I'm like, damn it, that was my thing. Now I'm stuck with these. But yes, we passed out a ton of them. So I'm hoping we'll have even more people like joining us. And if you do want to join us and come yak on the shows, do send us a message as well. Always recruiting. We have actually a couple of new people joining us on the panel along with the channel as well. So, but until then, everybody, have an excellent week. And we'll see you guys next week on the Monday Night Podcast. Take care.